The newest Green Day album, Saviors, comes out this Friday. I was lucky enough to hear it early at a Sonic Boom listening party in Toronto. I listened to it last Saturday. I took notes and everything about the album, and I'm finally going to talk about it. I've been busy, as I always say, but I've been really excited to talk about this record because it was one of my most anticipated for the year, so I'm glad it's already out. I also got this amazing poster, so that was another big plus of it. But if you don't already know, Green Day is one of my favorite bands and has almost always been one of my favorite bands. I love a lot of their records, but after the last album, I was a little bit worried when they first announced this one, and then they released the first single and I was totally ready for the rest of this album, and I'm so glad to say that it is their best album in a long time.
The American dream is killing me. The American dream is killing me. When it's all double talk of conspiracy.
Saviors comes out this Friday. It is a 15-track album. The tracks that have already been released are The American Dream is Killing Me, Look Ma No Brains, One Eye Bastard, and Dilemma. It features 11 other tracks. It is a 46-minute long album, and as I said, it's finally time to talk about it. I've been really excited for this album, and I do want to say, of course, I have listened to this album only one time, and it was through the speakers of Sonic Boom, but I was also right beside it, so I heard basically as much as I could have heard here. So when I'm commenting on the mix and all stuff like that, it is what I've heard from a speaker, but still I think I got a pretty good listen that first time. Right away, as I mentioned, this is their best album in a long time. Their last album, Father of All Motherfuckers, was just horrendous, and the band even agrees, most people agree, at least from what I've heard, that that is not a good album. So I wasn't too worried because I feel like after, you know, everybody hates your last album, you're not going to do the same thing, but that was kind of refreshed for me when I heard The American Dream is Killing Me, which was the first single here, and I saw their CFL halftime performance and everything on the TV, I should say, and I was really excited. I heard that single, I heard a bit of Dilemma, which I really loved, and also Look Ma No Brains, and then the rest were all first time listens, and I gotta say, this is such a consistent album, and even though the songs here sometimes will feel familiar because of the song structure, a lot of them open with Billy Joe, just his guitar and his voice, and they open kind of on at the same time. They both, you know, start at the same beat, the vocals and guitar, and then everything else kicks in. You kind of get used to hearing that here, where it doesn't feel too different, but it's also just a welcome feeling because it does sound really good. These vocals are incredible throughout the entire album. There's a lot of higher parts that you don't expect someone like Billy Joe to still be able to sing, but he's still got it. He's almost gotten better, or at least more clear with age, which I really love. Of course, I love Green Day. As I said, they are one of my favorite bands. You can see American Idiot sitting back there, and I really do love a ton of their albums. So I feel like I might have been a little bit more picky with this one, which is why I'm really glad that I loved it so much. I went to this listening party with my friends Jonas and Ariana. Ariana doesn't listen to a lot of Green Day, but Jonas is an even bigger Green Day fan than I am, and he, I think, loved the album even more than I did. So far, so good. It seemed that everybody there was really enjoying it. When it comes to breaking down all the aspects of Green Day, you obviously have to talk about the guitar, and there are some songs here where the guitar tone is so overdriven and harsh that it sounds just incredible. Like it really sounds punk, but like cleaned up a little bit, which a lot of people won't like, but it isn't just the basic studio sound. And there's a few songs here like Corvette Summer, which really, you see what I'm talking about. The guitar tone is just so huge still today, and I know obviously you can do all the studio tricks to it, but when I hear really good guitar tone as a guitarist, you know, I really appreciate that. And there are still all the classic Green Day palm muted or very open playing riffs where, you know, you hit a few power chords, hit the open, you go to, and you hear that throughout the entire album, but it still sounds really good. It really mixes well with Billy Joe's voice, which, as I said before, is amazing. But a surprise here was Mike Dirnt's bass. It was so loud and prominent in the mix for almost all, if not all, the songs here that at least featured it, that I was shocked that a lot of the parts I was remembering was more so the bass parts than the guitar parts, and obviously the bass has been super loud on a ton of their songs, but here it's like the whole album, it really does feel like the bass is taking lead at some points, and Trey Cool once again just absolutely smashes it on the drums. He's one of my favorite drummers, always has been. You get the classic Trey Cool fills, you get the classic punk kick patterns, everything, but it fits so well in the context of these songs. And just like most Green Day albums, especially the more rock or like, I don't know, more less punk and more rock, and not that there's a huge difference between it. People will always argue about that, but when it comes to Green Day, there's not a huge difference between the two. It still sounds really good, and the band still sounds tight, yet there's still this huge sound that is being produced by them, and a lot of these songs have lyrics that really do mean something, and lyrics that resonated with me. One of my favorite, if not my favorite song on the album was Bobby Socks, which is the third song. And this is what Billy Joe Armstrong said when an interview came up about the song. I was listening to it and going, wow, this is really good. Oh, he flipped it. Oh, there's the inclusion, everything like that. There's parts in the song that made me kind of happy in a way, and reading how he was talking about this song even makes it even better, and you kind of see the creative process. I know they've posted some stuff on YouTube, which I will watch after this, and there are 15 songs on this album. It seems like it'd be quite long with 15 songs, but none of the songs, I think except one, which is the last song, go over 4 minutes, so they are pretty short. So even if there are songs that are the weaker ones, which, you know, there are some weaker songs on here, obviously, with almost every album ever. They are like over soon, but there's no songs I would consider bad here. It's just the songs for me that didn't stand out or have something special to really hook me with them, which made me like them less, or some parts where I go, yeah, well, I would change the vocals maybe back to this. There's that classic megaphone Green Day vocal sound on one of the songs here, and then it switches normal for the chorus, and then switches back to the megaphone sound, which I think could have been better if they just went back to the normal sound, but I get why they did it. That's one of the things with this album, is even with my problems, quote unquote problems with this album, I still I see why they did it, and I appreciate that they did it. A lot of people will be like, yeah, this is just basic stadium rock, but I found a deeper meaning in a lot of these songs, and I think depending on your age, depending on how well you know Green Day and stuff like that, it will affect your enjoyment of this album, but it's also an album I think everybody can enjoy because it has very beautiful, clear melodies here, great guitar parts, some nice acoustic parts too. The bass, as I said, is really killer, and the drums, it's the huge Trey Cool sound. It is one of the best mixed albums I've heard, at least from a speaker, of the past few years, where the classic thing in rock is have a super loud guitar, have drums that are loud, have vocals that you can almost not hear, and then have a bass that you can almost not hear once again. But here I really found the mixing to be very impressive. And then of course the songwriting and just overall greatness of this album compared to the last few. I don't think I've listened to Revolution Radio, or whatever that one's called, in years. I think I listened to it once. Father of All was obviously awful. The trilogy people don't really like, and then of course the 2000s had a bunch of great albums, and same with the 90s, but this is the best one I've heard in quite a long time, which is impressive to say with Green Day with so many great albums under their belt. It would rank, I'd say, when it comes to their albums, sort of in the upper middle section, because obviously there's so many classics, but I think this is their best album since 21st Century Breakdown, or maybe even American Idiot. Now I'm going to jump into the part in this video where I just go through all the songs very quickly individually so you can hear my specific thoughts. As always, I recommend listening to the album before watching reviews, but I mean, if you're watching this review the day it came out or the day after, the album isn't out yet, so if you went to the listening party though, I would like to know how that experience was for you, because I feel like it'd be very different depending on the audience, but for me it was really good. The opening song of this album, The American Dream Is Killing Me, is the newest Green Day classic. It has great vocals, a great riff, heavy bass, and just has everything that I love about the band here. It sounds really good live from what I've heard from videos, and I'm excited to hopefully one day see this one live. Look Ma No Brains has an amazing bass tone, as you'll hear me say multiple times. The lyrics aren't too memorable here, but the melody is nice, and the bridge section is quite sick. There's some heavy parts in this album that I did not expect. Bobby Socks is possibly my favorite song on the album. It has killer harsh vocals, some nice bisexual undertones. It sticks with you, it's heavy, maybe a little bit repetitive, but it works in the way the drums sound great, and especially the toms. Trey Cool has one of the best tom sounds probably ever. One Eye Bastard has a killer groovy heavy riff, and although it is familiar with its song structure, it still sounds good. The breakdown is quite heavy as well. Dilemma feels like another classic song from Green Day. The lyrics instantly stick with you, the verse and guitar part too. Billy Joe sounds amazing on the song. This is a song that I can tell will be in the band's set list for a long time. 1981 has a more modern or clean cleaned up sound, but the punk roots are starting to come out here, and right from the opening you hear it with the classic punk drumming, the power chord riffs, palm mutes, everything. It really works here. Goodnight Adelle is more on the ballad side of this album, but it still features heavy drums and bass fills that are sweet. The vocals are once again super impressive, and although a little bit forgettable besides the chorus, the real guitar solo on this album rocks. It's one of those that does kind of push the Green Day guitar solo thing, which, I mean, there's not a lot of guitar solos in punk, but most of Green Day solos have only a few notes here, and they work perfectly for the song, but this one pushes it to be a little bit different, which I found quite surprising and nice. Coma City is a very easy and fun listen. There is a nice classic punk rock kick drum pattern here. There's some nice quick fills towards the end, and it paints a great picture and story in your mind. As I said, it's very easy and a very fun song. It's one that will be on repeat. It's not one of my favorites, but it is quite a fun and enjoyable song overall. Corvette Summer has an incredible guitar tone that I previously mentioned. It easily gets your head banging. It is a classic straight up rock song and has a Green Day type solo, as I mentioned, but it still works perfectly here, and the chorus is insanely catchy. Susie Chapstick has a similar opening to some of these songs, but it is still a welcome sound. Sounds like there's an acoustic guitar in the back here, which is a nice addition. Mike Dirnt's bass tone really holds down a lot of the song. There are a few times that the song does become a little bit too poppy or generic for me. It's probably my least favorite on this album, but overall, kind of as I said, it has a bunch of really great elements to it. Strange Days Are Here to Stay opens with a classic palm muted distorted riff, which is killer, and when the band kicks in, it really fills out well. Again, it's not a crazy different song. It does feel quite familiar, but it still really works in context of the album. Living in the 20s has a classic sounding Green Day riff. It is probably the best on the album, at least from my memory right now. You just have the essential rock and roll sound of power chords sliding all over, and Mike and Trey's parts are awesome. I love when the whole band drops out and comes back in. It's simple, but always will get me, and the solo at the end is quite nice too. Father to a Son was a song I was very excited for. Just with the title, you can tell it's going to be more on the ballad side, and it features a nice acoustic sound here. It opens with the great sweet sound of Billy Joe Armstrong singing and an acoustic guitar, which you hadn't really had on the rest of this album except for one song kind of in the background, so you knew it had to come up at some point. It's very well mixed when the full band comes in because they don't drown out Billy Joe. It's a nice slower ballad that does build up the entire time. The title track, Saviors, has a sweet opening. The megaphone vocals are back and work for the opening part of the song, although I would have changed it kind of later on in the verses. It's still okay here. The lyrics in the chorus are memorable. The groove is rocking and very steady. This is one of Trey's standout tracks on this album. And finally, Fancy Sauce has a nice chord progression that opens this one up. Classic Green Day style lyrics, very much trebly, and I want to say sharp bass tone, but like musically it would be wrong because it is tuned well. Like it's not tuned sharp, but it just has a very much cutting edge bass tone the entire album, but especially on this track. My friend Jonas said this one would be really good to hear live, and it has some great lyrics here. Medicate My Sorrow I really love, and of course We All Die Young Someday, the kind of finale to this album, and it's just really good overall. As I said, this is an album that I was very excited for, and I'm really glad it paid off. It was nice to go to an actual record store and listen to an album fully almost a week before it comes out. Green Day's Saviors is a nice return to form that features classic sounding riffs, a piercing lead bass tone, and killer drums. Although the song formats sound familiar, Green Day still manages to inspire me and create music that feels important even decades later. This album is by far the band's best in a long time. I'm going to give Saviors an 8.5 out of 10. As I mentioned before, if you went to any listening parties or had any special early stuff with the band and listening to this album, let me know how that went in the comments down below. I'm very interested in how that experience was. I'd never done anything like this before, so it was nice, and Green Day, good job with the marketing and posters and everything they're doing for people. There are also books, and there's a pin somewhere on my wall back here. It might be out of frame, but that's okay. But tell me how excited you are for this album, and if you have heard it, let me know your thoughts on it. And did you get tickets for their new tour? I really want to, but it's super expensive, but we'll see what I can do. Thank you all for watching. I will see you guys next time. Over and out.